Hello everyone, and welcome back to our Senior Leader Series. Today, I've got Miss Sharlynn Kaina. She is the Assistant Chief of Staff G8 at Fort Shafter, Hawaii, and she's a distinguished member of the Senior Executive Service. Ms. Kaina, aloha. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So, what is your role as the Assistant Chief of Staff G8 at USERPAC?
So I advise the Commanding General and the staff on theater resource management operations. That's for all assigned and attached Army forces in the Pacific. In addition to that, though, as being the Senior Resource Manager in the Pacific, I help to shape the workforce, to manage talent, and to develop the CP11 workforce out there.
So I understand you began your career working in the manpower and force management field. What did you do exactly, and how was that experience?
So actually I started off with the TDA documentation. So this is way before WebTADs came into being, and we were actually doing punch card and updating our documents that way. And so from there, I went and did requirements determination, manpower staffing standards, Schedule X type actions, and then it kind of grew into doing the trails for the budget manpower guidance, and then the POM process and command plan process. So that was, I couldn't have asked for a better foundation, if you will, and it gave me a good analytical background. It taught me writing skills, and I find that coming up through the other functional areas was really lacking in some of the individuals that I came across. So the CP26 career field gave me a really good foundation from which I built.
And you got to touch all those fun TDA and POM and all the fun parts of manpower.
Yeah, it is.
So as we continue to talk about how you started out your career, when you walked in the door day one, was your plan to start out and become a senior executive? And if not, or if so, did you have any mentors along the way?
Yeah. So no, coming into the federal service, I didn't even know what an SES was. And I came in as a GS3, clerk typist, temporary. And so the only thing in my mind was, you got to get a permanent job, right? And so from there it was, so once I got the permanent job, it was, okay, so what do I want to do, right? And the next thing I looked for was a mobility program, something to give me the opportunity to gain more knowledge and more skills and training. And so I was fortunate to get a local intern program, which got me to at least a 11, 12 level. And from there, as a junior analyst, looking at what is it I want to do, it gave me sort of the freedom to kind of figure it out. And so I was looking for the next challenge. So what is it I knew, and what is it I didn't know, and what I wanted to learn. And so as I got up in the senior ranks, it was more about what I hadn't touched yet, and getting out and expanding my experience base to look at what I haven't done yet. And so along the way, there was a ton of mentors, and some in the real informal stages. I mean, I had senior analysts telling me what I should be doing and what I should be working towards. And then I had the more formal stages of SESs and other senior leaders that told me, what I should be doing and where I need to be headed. And so those were the most helpful, I think, in doing this, because it's hard to do it alone. And so getting the mentors, getting the help, even if they just was there to hear what the struggles that I had or the challenges that I had, they gave me good advice. And so I wouldn't be here today without them, that's for sure.
So you've worked at many different organizational levels. You've worked at installations, you worked at Army commands, you worked at headquarters. Which level did you enjoy working at most? And why did you pursue the opportunity to work at these different levels?
Yeah, so I can't pick one. I mean, I think at every assignment that I had and every level, I enjoyed doing the job. I mean, that's kind of why I did it. One was I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to make sure I left the organization in a better place that I found it. But it was just getting out and getting the experience. It was challenging myself and getting to know what my strengths and weaknesses were and where I had to shore up those weaknesses. That's more what it was about. And it was about, when you have folks at the installation looking at the headquarters going, they don't know, those folks don't know what they're doing. And so it was about me getting down to that level and figuring out, okay, so how can I best help them understand what the headquarters sees, and likewise, how can I help the headquarters understand what the installations see, and so to improve that communication and that whole process, that's what I think I enjoyed the most.
So CP26 often talks about mobility enhances chances, and we've just talked about the organizational mobility in your career. I want to touch on the geographic mobility because it's very interesting. You've gone from Hawaii to Japan, back to Hawaii, then to headquarters, and then back to Hawaii. So what did you learn from these different locations and the different positions that you held there, and then what were the advantages and disadvantages of these moves?
So it was a big move. My first PCS was a big move for me, and Japan the opportunities just presented itself, and so I had an opportunity to go out there, and I love the culture and I love the food, and I thought, well, why not, right? Why not take a chance and go out there? But it was also a transitional time for me because I was still in a CP26, and I took a job there that started in CP26, but I ended up transitioning over to CP11. And so, it was in Japan at the installation level that I got into budget execution, budget formulation, and got my experience there. So it was a great time to do that transition so that I could come back to USERPAC and get more involved in the budget execution process because I had such a history with the manpower process. And so that's what USERJ did for me. And then coming back to Hawaii, again, another opportunity presented itself, and at this time I was at IMCOM Pacific, and I was the resource manager there. And an opportunity presented itself for me to go work for the headquarters, and it was a job that I contemplated. Did I want to do this? Because I had just gotten to the region headquarters and had not even made 2 years. And I thought, I usually stay in a job at least 4 years before I move on. And the opportunity came up and said, hey, do you want to go out and be the budget officer for IMCOM? And understand that I went from managing a $1 billion budget to an $11 billion budget. And so just the sheer volume of that was frightening. And so I stepped back and kind of looked at it and said, well, it's kind of now or never. If I don't do this now, then I'll probably not have the opportunity. So I went ahead and I took a leap of faith and left for the IMCOM headquarters. And again, it's helping the headquarters understand what the garrisons go through, what's happening on the installations, and bring that awareness, if you will, to the headquarters. And so that was a positive experience for me, and we'll talk later on where I ended up after I left IMCOM headquarters. But moving, there's advantages and yes, disadvantages to moving. Advantages, of course, different cultures, different organizations. You build relationships that come back and relationships that last. You build friendships. I think the only, for me, disadvantage was not having my family with me and being gone out of the family. And you kind of miss the day-to-day activity that goes on and everything in between. And so you kind of had to deal with that. But knowing that it's not on a permanent basis kind of helped. That I knew I would go home one day, so that kind of helped.
So what prompted your move to the Air Force Secretariat? As a comptroller there, you led efforts focused on improving human capital management. What skills did you develop that supported your selection to the Senior Executive Service?
Okay. So making my way to the Army, the Air Force Secretariat, it was actually through PPP, priority placement. IMCOM headquarters, as I was stating, as I worked for them, was in Crystal City, and they were transitioning to San Antonio. And so I had not planned to move to San Antonio with the headquarters. So once that transition had occurred, then I had placed myself on PPP, like many others had done. And so I was probably one of the last ones. There's a bunch of us that kind of held off to make sure everybody else was placed and taken care of. And so I got my notice that I'm to report to the Air Force. And so that was a challenge in and of itself, because I'd grown up Army, and even though I've grown up, resource management or financial management, it was different going to a different service. And so as it turns out that the organization I went to was titled Workforce Development. And so going into that organization, what was really surprising for me was there was a little bit of everything that I had done already in that organization. And so, I had done manpower, and I was in charge of manpower for the Army Secretariat, the FM piece. There was civilian processing. There was officer management. War planners. I had the war planners. I had training and education in there. I just had the gamut of operations in that one directorate. And so I was fortunate to fall into that organization, which really helped me actually to grow not only in the Air Force, but I think in financial management as well, and the managing of the career field. And so it was there that I think I learned the most, and I was fortunate to have good leaders that let me be a little creative in what I was able to do. And so they gave me the latitude to be creative. And so we developed tools for the workforce. We had developed an automated IDP tool that really made it easier to manage talent for the Air Force. And other helpful things. We updated courses for the Air Force, and so and it allowed me to see how the Air Force trains and educates their members versus how the Army did. And so I was really pleased with my years there with the Air Force, and I mean to the point where at the tail end of that assignment, we were working on a handbook on how to become an SES. And so just putting out those tools for the workforce, I think was really helpful, because I was going through the process of, hey, I should probably prepare for an SES assignment. And so just getting your packet ready and getting everything ready for if you were able to get an interview, etc. All of that we were able to capture in the handbook at the same time as I was going through this process. So it was very beneficial.
So what I'm getting is you've challenged yourself constantly throughout your career. You've moved to many functional disciplines. You've moved services. You've worked at different echelons. Yeah. So how did these changes prepare you for your current position at USERPAC?
So it's always, I always look to challenge myself. I always look to push envelope. And I always wanted the opportunity to come back home. And so Hawaii is my home. And when the SES assignment was posted, I thought, wouldn't it be great, right, if I went home, well, first, that I get to go home to an assignment. And then second, if I could get an SES. And so all that I've done in my career has primarily prepared me for this. That and the time spent at USERPAC, because it's not my first assignment to USERPAC. I mean, I was there at the beginning when it was just a 3-star command. I was there when they called it WESCOM. And so and then I was there, going out to Japan, going TDY to Alaska. So I was very familiar with the organization itself. And so that only made it a little bit easier. But now that, having an assignment in the Pentagon, understanding how that process works really was the deciding factor for me.
So you've mentioned several times preparation and being prepared. So how can someone prepare for a move geographically or organizationally? What's the best way that they can do that?
So they need to look at their plan, whatever their career plans are. And I will tell you that my career plan might have changed several times before I actually took an assignment overseas. And a lot of that comes into play. But if you know what your ultimate goals are, and you can plan for where you want to be, and it's really the experience you want to get, not necessarily the location you want to be in, but what experience are you trying to get? What are you trying to be more competent at? And then look for jobs in that area. That would prepare you a little bit better job-wise. But then again, location is everything, and so you also have to be familiar with the culture that you're going to, and understand that, and whether you can bring your family or not. And that all factors into that. And I think once you consider the impact to your family and have an agreement with your family, I don't think you'll make a bad decision.
So I want to bring it back to something you said very early on in our discussion. You talked about how you can't do it alone. You can't build your career without someone there. It's very, very difficult. So what's your approach when it comes to mentoring civilians?
So, you're absolutely right. I didn't get here on my own. I got here through a lot of good people that was willing to help and spend the time with me. And so I offer that to those out there who needs a mentor, whether it be, somebody that says, here's where I think you need to be, or somebody that really sits down with them and say, okay, so what is it you want to do? I've never taken an assignment because of the grade or because of the money. It's always been the challenge and the experience that I want to get. A lot of folks today, and I see this, they're chasing a grade, and they're forgetting about the experience that you get when you work a position and when you work an assignment. And so if I tell them anything, it's to figure out what you want to do. And what experiences you want to have, and then decide where, in which organization you can get that experience, and then apply for it. Or in a lot of times we can look at whether we can do reassignments, etc., and move people around. But part of what we do out there, what I do out there in the Pacific, is talent management, and try to get the right people in the right place at the right time. Because not everybody is mobile, but then mobility changes too, as your family grows and things change. And so I try to kind of get the feel for what their desires are, so that I can get them the right exposure at the right time.
So you've been in CP26, then CP11, you're a resource manager. So what advice would you give to someone who's looking to become a multifunctional civilian? How can they really build up that section of their career?
So it's about mastering your skills, right? And when you've mastered what you have, whether it be CP11, CP26, then I think you've got a little bit of confidence to kind of venture out and look to do something different. I would love to go out and do something different, and it's waiting for the right opportunity to do that. But it's just arming yourself with enough information and working the jobs that get you the recognition, and so it's not just working a job, but working some of the tough jobs that really kind of showcases what you're good at. And so if they can do that and figure out from there where they want their career to go. I think that would be the most helpful for them.
Well, Ms. Kaina, those are all the questions I have. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, so I mean, the one thing I tell folks is to really get out of your comfort zone, because that's when the magic happens, right? That's when you learn to grow and you actually see your growth. And so it's always a reminder for me to get out of my comfort zone, pretty much like this interview.
Well, Ms. Kaina, I know that you've got an extremely busy schedule. You're on, only here for a short duration, so I really appreciate you coming out here. Mahalo for coming out here and speaking with me. I really appreciate it, and thank you for everything you do every day.
Thank you for having me, Corey.